They always believed that I'd stole 2.2 billion Singapore dollars. The headline is British Bank collapses on the Asian Wall Street Journal. Read it, realise that it's all me.
How did one man bring down a 233-year-old merchant bank? For 28-year-old trader Nick Leeson, all it took was a secret error account, known as the 5/8 account. As the number 8 is considered lucky in Chinese culture, operating thousands of miles away in Singapore, Leeson's unauthorized trades and high-stakes bets wiped out £830 million or $1.3 billion, ultimately destroying Barings Bank, one of England's most iconic financial institutions. As the head of operations on the Singapore Exchange, SGX, Leeson lived the fantasy of a rogue trader, but behind the scenes, he was just an accountant hiding massive losses and cooking the books. How does one man's ambition and deception bring a bank that was once a cornerstone of Europe's financial power to its knees, ultimately selling it off for just £1? And more importantly, could it all have been stopped before it was too late? You're watching The Money Game. Nicholas William Leeson was born on February 25, 1967, in Watford, Hertfordshire, England, to a plasterer father and a nurse mother. After completing secondary school, Leeson chose not to attend college and instead began working as a clerk at Coutts Bank. Driven to advance in the financial world, he saw an opportunity in the fast-paced and lucrative field of financial trading. In 1987, he started working at the American banking giant Morgan Stanley in their futures and options department, providing support to traders as a clerk. Like many others, Leeson aspired to become a trader himself, but was rejected. Determined to pursue his goal, he left Morgan Stanley to chase his dream of becoming a stock trader. Leeson soon joined Barings Bank, a prestigious institution and the oldest merchant bank in Britain, run by the Barings family for over 200 years. While Barings could raise capital with ease, its operations struggled to keep pace with the demands of modern banking. Leeson began working at Barings Securities as a bookkeeper, responsible for tracking the bank's money. He quickly impressed his superiors with his sharp eye for detail and his ability to identify and resolve operational issues. Not long after, he was sent abroad to resolve some issues. In Jakarta, he discovered that clients owed the bank a massive amount of money. It was a common problem for Barings, having paid for large shipments of stock but never receiving the goods from customs. The amount owed was an astonishing £100 million. Barings had a history of letting deals slip through the cracks, but Leeson's fresh perspective helped uncover and reclaim millions of pounds owed to the bank. His performance in the settlements department, including investigating allegations of fraud, earned him further recognition. While in Jakarta, he met Lisa Sims, a Barings staff member he genuinely liked, and in 1992, the two of them married. That same month, his years of hard work finally paid off when Barings offered him the position of a trader. When Barings Bank opened a futures trading operation in Singapore in 1992, they wanted him to run their futures operation. At just 25 years old, Leeson was placed in charge of trading on the chaotic floor of SIMEX, Singapore International Monetary Exchange. This trading environment was intense. Phones rang constantly, traders yelled orders, and fistfights occasionally broke out. In this high-pressure setting, Leeson was responsible for trading futures contracts for the Nikkei 225, an index of 225 of the largest companies on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. But there was one major flaw in Barings' decision. Leeson was given control over both trading and operations. This unusual setup meant he could execute trades and oversee the back-office functions that tracked those trades. In banking, separating these roles is a fundamental safeguard against fraud. Yet, Barings overlooked this basic principle, and you'll soon understand why. Leeson's job was to buy and sell futures contracts. Trading futures involves predicting where an index will stand in 3, 6, 9, or 12 months. He was acting under orders from both the bank and its clients. If the market moved as predicted, they made money. If it didn't, their losses mounted rapidly. Leeson was confident in his abilities and well-liked by his team. However, in the summer of 1992, the market experienced violent fluctuations, and his team began making serious mistakes. These errors, made by inexperienced traders and new staff, led to bad bets. If these issues weren't addressed, Barings Bank stood to lose a significant amount of money. The normal response of a trader would be to inform head office, but instead, afraid of losing the job he had worked so hard for and driven by his own confidence, Nick decided to hide the losses from his bosses in England. To do this, he secretly manipulated the software and created a hidden account so his superiors wouldn't see the bad trades. He called this account the 5/8 account. This allowed him to keep his losing trades active but out of view. Nick believed he could eventually recover the losses with future successful trades, but there was one major problem: margin payments. When you trade on leverage using borrowed money, brokers require collateral to cover potential losses. This collateral is known as a margin payment. Margin payments are crucial for traders because they prove to banks or lenders that they have the funds to back up their deals. However, if a trader loses money on a deal, they must pay additional funds to cover those losses, and that's where problems can arise. In Nick's case, he didn't want his bosses to discover his losses, so he kept hiding them. However, the margin payments kept increasing, and those couldn't be concealed. To keep his losing trades open, he had to make the payments to prevent them from being closed. This meant he needed more money from outside sources to sustain his trades. Nick was essentially gambling, hoping the market would turn in his favor so he could recover the losses and come out ahead. The only way to get this money was to request funds from London, so Leeson took a risk. He told head office the money was for futures he had purchased on behalf of clients. But the clients didn't exist. It was a blatant lie. As weeks passed, London continued sending Leeson money, failing to notice that no corresponding funds were coming in from actual clients. Leeson had discovered a flaw in the system. He could hide his mistakes and trade out of them in his own time, without anyone ever knowing. Trusting that Nick had the bank's best interests at heart, the branch in England sent him increasingly large sums of money, never bothering to check where it was actually going. But Leeson's plan was unraveling. By the end of 1992, the market had turned against him, and the losses he was hiding kept growing. His secret 5/8 account had become a monster he could no longer control, at one point holding losses of £4 million. Still, Leeson refused to stop. He took the classic gambler's approach. He doubled down. In secret, he bought 100 more futures contracts, a reckless move that violated all the bank's rules. But Leeson was betting that if the market turned in his favor, he could make enough money to erase his losses. In the spring of 1993, the market finally moved his way. Day by day, Leeson made thousands of pounds, and by July, he had cleared his losses. He later described those 9 months as a nightmare, but in the end, he had come out relatively unscathed. However, he hadn't learned from his mistakes. Instead of recognizing the importance of risk management, he had discovered how to commit fraud and get away with it. Rather than seeing this as a warning, Leeson saw it as an opportunity to get incredibly rich. Fueled by overconfidence, he believed he could recover from any losses and maintain his reputation as a legend in the industry. But Leeson didn't stop his deception. This time, it wasn't about covering up someone else's mistakes. It was deliberate fraud. He began using the secret account to offer clients futures at unrealistically low prices, creating losses for himself. He then hid those losses in the 5/8 account. Leeson had created the perfect illusion of being a brilliant trader. To everyone around him, he appeared successful and sharp. But behind the scenes, it was all a lie. His secret account was accumulating more and more losses. He believed he could trade his way out of trouble again, just as he had before. But this time, things spiraled completely out of control. Leeson exploited his dual control over the trading desk and back office, allowing him to manipulate records and hide his losses without oversight. The situation was further compounded by the fact that derivatives trading was still relatively new. Few people truly understood how it worked, making it even easier for Leeson to cover his tracks. However, as his losses mounted, Leeson's actions started raising red flags among the staff responsible for approving his money transfers. He stuck to his usual excuse: the funds were for client trades. But one key figure in the process began noticing something suspicious. The so-called clients weren't paying their bills. For the first time, an internal audit was ordered. In July 1993, auditors were sent to Singapore to investigate. By then, the secret 5/8 account had concealed losses exceeding £100 million. The purpose of an audit is to review and verify financial records, and Leeson knew this could expose everything. If the auditors uncovered the secret account, his scheme would collapse. But then, he got incredibly lucky. The auditors didn't check a single record. They didn't test one record. That's not an audit, Leeson later said. The auditors appeared to trust him, likely because of his impressive track record and the bank's high profits under his leadership. Once again, Leeson avoided detection and continued his scheme. The audit's failure gave him a dangerous false sense of security. It reinforced his image as a financial genius, allowing him to maintain his lavish lifestyle in Singapore, while his fraudulent empire grew ever larger. By the autumn of 1994, Leeson's hidden losses had ballooned to an astonishing £160 million. He was trapped. To keep London from becoming suspicious, he needed to appear as if he was making massive profits, when in reality, his actual gains were minimal. To maintain the illusion, Leeson took an extraordinary step. He began using the 5/8 account to create fake trades, essentially buying futures from himself at inflated prices. This manipulation made it seem like he was generating significant profits, but in truth, it only deepened his financial hole. He was caught in a vicious cycle. Each attempt to cover his losses only made the situation worse. In September 1994, the Singapore Exchange celebrated its 10th anniversary and honored Barings Bank with 2 awards for outstanding performance. The success was credited to Nick Leeson, the trader hailed as the driving force behind the bank's achievements. Yet when it came time to accept the awards, Leeson refused to go on stage. Deep down, he knew the truth. His so-called success was nothing more than deception and hidden losses. 3 months later, in December, Barings flew all its traders to a conference in New York, where Leeson was celebrated as the king of the exchange. Having supposedly generated an astounding £28 million for the bank, he was praised as Barings's golden boy. However, not everyone was convinced by Leeson's success. Some traders questioned how such extraordinary profits could come from supposedly low-risk trading. Despite these concerns, Barings Bank executives ignored the red flags. With the bank thriving, Leeson began requesting hundreds of thousands of pounds daily for margin payments, requests that were approved without hesitation. The executives believed Leeson had a built-in safety net, assuming he made opposite trades to hedge risks. In reality, this was a lie, leaving the bank dangerously exposed to massive, unchecked losses. The people running Barings were not only impressed by Leeson's profits, but also didn't understand the basics of the business they had taken over. By the end of the year, Leeson's deception had led to Barings Bank transferring an astonishing 75% of its entire capital, around £330 million, directly into his control. By January 1995, Leeson's scheme was unraveling. Even Cymax's own auditors had begun investigating his activities. Desperate to cover his tracks, he resorted to forging documents, cutting signatures from old letters and pasting them onto fake ones, constructing an elaborate facade to buy himself more time. There were no major economic or political factors affecting the Japanese market, so Nick Leeson placed his bet on its stability. For a brief period, his strategy seemed to work. He made a profit as the market remained steady. If this trend had continued, he might have erased his losses and emerged victorious. But fate had other plans. On January 17th, at 5:46 a.m., a massive earthquake struck Kobe, Japan. The disaster claimed 6,000 lives, displaced 45,000 people, and sent shockwaves through the financial markets. The Nikkei index, in which Leeson had heavily invested, collapsed completely. His luck had finally run out. Desperate, Leeson made one last reckless gamble. Using Barings Bank's money, he bought thousands of futures contracts, attempting to single-handedly prop up the market in the wake of the earthquake. The move backfired spectacularly, resulting in a devastating £50 million loss in a single day. Still refusing to admit defeat, Leeson requested even more funds from the bank, covering his tracks with falsified profits. These fabricated figures, funneled through his infamous 5/8 account, convinced Barings executives that he was thriving amid the post-earthquake market chaos. To get the money he wanted, Leeson kept declaring fake profits. In 1 week alone, he reported £10 million in gains. figures no one had ever seen before. At one point, auditors uncovered a £50 million loss that Leeson had failed to conceal. Panicked, he forged a bank loan document using scissors and glue. Incredibly, the auditors accepted the crude forgery, even though the faxed signature clearly displayed Nick Leeson at the top, exposing his desperate deception. However, on February 17th, a clerk in Singapore uncovered discrepancies in Nick Leeson's accounts. For 6 days, Leeson managed to deceive him, but on the 7th day, he decided to run. He made an excuse about his wife's health, promising to return in 45 minutes. Instead, he rushed home, packed up his belongings, and, in a final attempt to escape the tangled web he had woven, he and his wife Lisa fled to Malaysia. Back in Singapore, Barings Bank's London officers finally accessed Leeson's 5/8 account. What they found was catastrophic, unchecked losses totaling £400 million. The bank would collapse if the issue wasn't fixed. It was a Friday, and since the markets were closed over the weekend, they had 2 days to address the situation. Crisis talks were ongoing all day at the Bank of England to work out a deal to save Britain's oldest merchant bank. They needed a massive capital injection to cover the losses, but the request was denied. When the market opened on Monday, February 27, 1995, traders dumped stocks, and Leeson's losses doubled to £830 million in a single day. The oldest merchant bank in Britain collapsed. Leeson and Lisa were arrested in Germany and extradited to Singapore, where he faced charges of deceiving auditors and cheating the Singapore Exchange. Sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, he served 4 years for good behavior. Despite his actions, Leeson remained unapologetic, blaming Barings' leadership for failing to understand the risks. They didn't know what they were doing, Leeson claimed, pointing out that senior managers lacked basic knowledge of derivatives and accepted his flimsy explanations without question. The courts partially agreed, ruling that Barings' lack of proper oversight and risk management had allowed the fraud to spiral out of control. The collapse of Barings Bank devastated thousands of employees and investors. Dutch bank ING purchased Barings for a symbolic £1, later selling off its assets. The fall of Barings Bank shook the financial world. Once a respected institution, it was brought down by a single rogue trader, exposing major flaws in risk management. Nick Leeson, released from prison in 1999, wrote Rogue Trader and became a motivational speaker warning against unchecked risk. The Barings collapse serves as a stark reminder. Blind trust, poor oversight, and unchecked greed can destroy even the strongest institutions. In finance, one reckless gamble can cost everything. That's the story of Rogue Trader, the rise and fall of Nick Leeson, and the collapse of Barings Bank. Money never sleeps on Wall Street, and neither does on our channel. Watch all the mind-blowing Wall Street stories and intriguing money movies all here in one place. Like this video and subscribe to The Money Game to level up your financial game today.